Welcome. We've been waiting for this podcast for a while now, Dheeraj. I understand the pressures of the corporate world. We have moved around, as an entrepreneur, I'm more flexible, so I feel that power now. So, ladies and gentlemen, and everyone else who's hearing us, I have a very dynamic CEO here sitting with us today, Dheeraj Sinha. He's the CEO for Leo Burnett, South Asia. So I think if I summarize Dheeraj's life, it's all about changing the trajectory of many brands, including PepsiCo, Spotify, Amazon, and the list goes on, to be honest. He is an award-winning strategist in Asia. Under his leadership, Leo Burnett has really been awarded #1 agency of the year, and of course, been the top agencies. Dheeraj has also spoken in the Cannes Festival, so I think there are lots of accolades. And the best thing about him is that he's also doing a podcast called Speak Easy with Dheeraj Sinha. And so we will speak easy with him today. He's on the other side. So Dheeraj, welcome. This is a fantastic day to get you. And what a beautiful background. So welcome to SecondAct podcast.
Thank you, Ashna. Great to be here. Looking forward to the conversation.
Oh, yes, of course. And of course, now, when you are podcasting on the other side, what is the first thing that you will ask your guest? Let's put it.
So my whole podcast is about going deep into the life and learnings of the people that we meet with, right? So to my mind, it's 1 hour of a very intense capsule of learning. Almost everything that someone has gone through. So I always start with the origin. I always start with what happened and how did they begin doing what they began doing. And a lot of our guests are startup founders and so on and so forth. So I always find the story of beginning fascinating.
Beautiful. So this podcast, we will ask you what you will ask and you will answer exactly that. So why don't we start with you, Dheeraj? When I rewind your life, whatever I can see in, whatever in the media is advertising. But I'm sure there's a beginning to, where you land, and then you're also here for a long time. Why don't you take us through this journey of first entering into it, and how's this landscape been for more than 20 years?
Yeah. So, I mean, I was at SRCC, I was doing economics, right? And all my friends were either wanting to do CA or serious stuff like that. In fact, I had an offer. I mean, the offer was from KPMG. So I would have either become a CA and a consultant. And the other offer was from Mica. And on a whim, because I was good in debating and so on and so forth at Delhi University, I said, I can communicate and understand people. So I went to Mica and I joined Mica. But when I joined Mica, it was a rude shock because, everybody in Mica was so talented, right? And had zero talents, right? So people would play guitars, they could sing well, they could draw, they could write. Some people had already been in advertising. They all knew David Ogilvy on advertising, the book by the back of their power. And I had read nothing. I had zero idea of advertising. And I was like, oh my God, what will I do in such a sea of cool people, right? With tattoos and shorts and so on and so forth. I was this boring geek guy who'd come from economics honors. And then over a period of time, I realized that, advertising is not just fun, play and games, but there's a lot of serious stuff which goes, and therefore I found my comfort and my succor in strategy. Right. So I said, okay, there's a lot of serious thinking which goes behind this. I can do this. I can do a boring job in a very exciting industry called strategy planning. Nice. And that's how I got into the business, right? I mean, and I've been a lifer strategist, in fact, by and large. Yeah.
So beautiful. What a journey. And, you started by saying that I did not have a talent and I wasn't good enough. And this is something that I am also debating, that why do people always feel like this? Because there is always a point in life which will coax you to still feel that, okay, I can do better and I'm not good enough. Why did you feel like that?
So I mean, it's interesting that you asked me that, Archana, because I feel like that even now, right? I don't feel I'm the smartest person around, but I think that adds to my advantage because I'm always hungry. I'm always hungry. I'm always doing more. I'm always learning. I always live with this feeling that there's more to do. I'm not doing enough. There's more to learn. I'm not learning enough. There's
Mm.
more to, I mean, for example, at this point in time at Leo Burnett, we are decently successful. We are the number one agency, one of the
Yeah.
biggest businesses. But at the same time, I go to bed thinking, what else could we be doing that we're not doing?
Hmm.
Right. So this sense of lack, I actually am very careful. I don't want to be a victim of my own hype. Right. so
Okay.
so 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 in some sense, that sense of insecurity helps me because I try harder all the time.
My God. Okay, this resonates pretty much, with how I think I have felt, how my peer group feels, my husband feels all the time. So I think this is very, very, successful people feeling like this. I don't know if it's an advantage. I'm still debating that because now I've started to
Yeah.
work with people to say, hey, you know what? We need to bring in self-worth and self-recognition.
Yeah.
But we will talk more about it. So if you had to really describe yourself to now somebody, what would you say about who is Dheeraj?
That's a tough one. I think I think many things. I think I'm more some of the parts of who I am. Right. At one level, I'm trying to be a leader. Right. And it's a tough job because you can run a business,
Yeah.
right? But to be a leader is a tough one. I mean, how do you? And my whole belief on leadership is that one is that you don't know everything, right? So you have to acknowledge that. At the same time, you need to provide direction. So
Yeah.
my idea of leadership is a much more distributed leadership, right? And the things we've done, for example, every Tuesday at Leo Burnett, we do a call with 50 people where we discuss the key strategies, decisions of the organization. So the organization led more by people than just by me. So how do you engage people? How do you invite them? How do you build a more democratic, distributed leadership? Yet be able to provide direction because finally you are responsible for that. That's your job. So I'm trying to be a leader, trying to open skies for people to fly in. Right. That's one role. I'm also a parent. I have a 17-year-old and a 7-year-old. So I'm trying to make sure that they have enough of my presence, yet not an overbearing presence in their life. So managing that
That's
and
smart.
navigating that, right? Trying to make sure that we spend enough time between my wife and I. So there's a personal side to that. There's an author, podcaster, content creator side to me. So Speakeasy with
Yes.
Dheeraj Sinha. I have a book in my mind. I haven't gotten to write it. So multi aspects to who I am right now.
Very, very
Right.
nice. I think very smart of you to say that I don't want to be an overbearing parent. I think that's a very big lesson we all have to learn, right? We just have to be
Yeah,
there when they need us, and then that's it. I think
yeah,
that's what I've
yeah.
learned as well with my two young children now. But you have created brands, you have really changed the way people think, a mindset which, literally shifts with one advertising, literally. So, how have you worked on being a brand yourself?
So I have always, Archana, believed that I have to give more than I take from my industry, from my business,
No.
right? So I wrote my first book when I was all of 32, right?
Oh,
And at
nice.
that point in time, I always wanted to write a book. I wanted to write a fiction book. But when the opportunity came to write a non-fiction, and I thought, oh my God, I mean, I'm not just senior enough. It's not I've lived all my life in strategy, and should I be writing a book at all? And I thought that let me start by putting my content out there so that my ideas reach more people, so that
Right.
whatever I'm thinking will redefine something, right? So I've always tried to do things which are beyond the ask. I've always believed in going out, creating more content, doing more stuff, right? And that in turn has shaped, say, the brand me, right? I feel that the things that I think about marketing, about brand building, about building a culture, about advertising as a business, about client agency relationships, about India and the Indian culture and how India has changed, it's all
Yeah.
out there. And my brand is the sum of the parts of the thinking that I put there. There is nothing more to that, because I also believe that a brand has to project what it is, right? There cannot be a big gap between who you are and what you say, and that's what I practice for myself as well as a brand.
I think that's a fantastic answer to being, putting yourself in the most authentic manner so that people can relate to you. I totally agree with that. And I think we do lead two lives, right? One corporate life, one personal life. And sometimes, it's difficult to like really be authentic at work. Um, so do you practice anything like that in the culture of Leo Burnett? Because advertising is also about a lot of, what should I say, creating something which is also imaginary. It is also something that people have to believe in. So do you see a conflict which comes, or is there something that you bridge in here with your organization?
Yeah. So a little bit of backstory, Ashita, right? I mean, when I joined advertising, right, about 22 years back, I mean, I was fortunate that I joined advertising at that time when there was this huge shift or revolution going through in advertising, where you didn't have to be the best guy in English, you didn't have to know how to play a guitar to be in advertising, right? So what say people like Prasoon, Piyush, Santosh did to this business was they brought a lot of authenticity to the business, right? So you could be yourself. I mean, the fact that my roots are in Bihar, the fact that I've studied in small towns of the country, my dad was in IB and used to get transferred every 3 years, right? So all of that I've been able to bring to the table, my understanding of India, of the streets of India, of small town India, and all of that. So in that sense, I'm lucky that I was born in advertising in an era where you didn't have to pretend. I mean, you could bring your real self, and put a lot of that in our work. I mean, a lot of that has gone into the work that I've done for a lot of my brands. If you look at most of my signature work, they carry a cultural imprint, whether it's the Spotify IPL work or the Virgin Mobile work or Ashirwad Atta, they all carry a cultural imprint. So I've been lucky in that sense, and therefore the culture that we propagate at Leo Burnett is of extreme authenticity. I mean, we embrace completely where we come from, who we are, what are we going through in life. So, for example, some of my partners or my leaders know exactly what's going on in my life, right, and so on and so forth. And we are very, very transparent about that with each other.
I think that's commendable, and keep that up, because I think we need more of the real stuff happening on ground. Yeah. Great. So tell me about, I mean, working with different brands, different campaigns, which one is really dearest to you, and of course, why?
See, a lot of them. Amongst the latest one, I would say the work we've done on Whisper, where we are bringing the missing chapter on menstruation back to Indian schools. Right. So 25 million girls in India fall out of education system every year. 25 million, Archana, because they don't understand what's happening to their body. Some feel it's a curse, some feel it's a disease, some feel they're dying, some feel they should stop going out. Right. That's such a mammoth loss of talent to India's GDP, right? And where will they learn about menstruation? I'm not at home because the mothers won't talk, it's a taboo, right? They can learn about that in schools, but there is no chapter on menstruation in Indian schools. So we are bringing that chapter back, and that to my mind is not just something which builds the brand, of course builds the brand and our larger idea of keeping girls schools, but the impact of that will be seen in 5 years, 10 years from now, when you have even say 10 or 15% of these girls coming back to the economic system and having an impact on India's GDP.
Absolutely. I think I work so closely in this through my social work as well, because I work in the sanitation space, and the thing about, of course, not even knowing about what hygiene is, what sanitation is, why is it so important? It's not only in the villages. I work in Delhi, in Gurgaon, in the communities right here, and it's as much lack of information as anywhere else. And when bigger brands really reach out, I think magic can happen, and they can touch so many millions of them in one go. And I love the Dove campaign as well, which is going on these days, also on again self-doubt. To be honest, it's so much stereotype on putting yourself in the color that you are from, or the background that you come, and the pimples on your face, or the fact the body looking in a certain way. And honestly, the magic of campaign starts in itself, and like bigger players come and they say, okay, I'm going to touch like 8 million lives in whatever time, and I think it's commendable. You guys really
Yeah.
can change things around. So
Yeah.
that is so amazing. Okay, so that was about, of course, work. Dheeraj, this podcast is about second act. And I don't want to describe second act. I always try to, say in my own words, because it's so close to my heart. This term, this brand is so much giving me power all the time. What do you decipher from this word? And if I have to ask you, what's your second act? What's that?
Yeah. So I don't, I mean, in my interpretation, I would say what I'm doing right now is my second act, right? So if you understand, Archana, is that I've been a strategist all my life, right? 17, 18 years being a strategist, right? And there your whole life is about a vertical. Your life is about understanding people, understanding consumers, and bringing that to bear for brands and businesses. That's what you do day in and day out. And it's a slightly introverted, reluctant profile, right? Because as a strategist, your KPI is not how great a relationship you are maintaining with your client or your peer. Your KPI is how deep or how smart or how sharp are your solutions, and so on and so forth. And I did that for 17 years across markets, APAC, 14 countries, so on and so forth. And then I stood up and I took charge of running a PNL, of running an organization, right?
Right.
So from a depth role, from an introverted depth role, I can do my bit and get out. I overnight went to a extroverted width role, right, where everything that happens in the organization, whether the washroom is faulty, to revenue, to client, to plumbing, is your responsibility, right? And you are being watched by 700, 800 people as some kind of a leader, role model, inspiration, etc., etc. So
Right.
this has been a complete shift for me in terms of my work profile, the way I see myself, the way I present myself, the way I interact with people. So I don't know. I mean, shorn of your definition of second act, I feel that's in some way my second act.
Definitely. But of course, I want to ask you, because like I want the answer to be more around what is that higher purpose that drives you out of bed every morning? So what is it that you are
Yeah.
doing as Dheeraj, on your
Yeah.
second act?
Yeah. See, I mean, and it comes on the back of what I just said, the whole idea that you can create a playing field for
Mhm.
someone else as a purpose,
Wow.
right? That is driving me at this point in time, right? Because when you're building a culture, when you're building an organization, you're not building it for yourself, right? You could go and be a consultant and make more money and do better work, have more time to yourself, etc., etc., right? But when you're building an organization, and if you're dedicated to it, you are dedicated to the lives of 750 people,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
I in some ways
Of
feel
course.
responsible for that, and the purpose of creating a sky for them where they can fly,
Mhm.
right? I mean, after 5 years, 8 years, 10 years, if I can look back and I feel that it impacted lives of 50 people, and they could do the best, they could live the best time of their life in this organization, and we gave them something which made them fly, that would be meaningful.
That's a good definition of a good leader. Always trying to
Yeah.
empower your colleagues and creating a ground which they can use for their own growth. So kudos for that.
Yeah.
Um, I have always been very curious to ask, because I started my career with advertising and it is 28
Yeah.
years ago. And I'm sure that lots have changed.
Yeah.
What is your experience when you started and, to 25 years later? What's going on in this area? What has changed? How has relatability, creativity, engagement with consumer? What do you have to say? Where is
Yeah.
advertising today?
Yeah. See, I think a lot has changed and a lot needs to change, right? I think when I joined advertising, and there are two aspects to it. One is advertising as a business and a culture, and agencies as organizations. Second is the business of advertising, the
Right.
what we create, the product, right? The easier part is on the product side. There we know that it's all about engagement. We move from broadcast to engagement. So it's not that you'll create
Yeah.
one jingle and you'll have one Ramayana where you will run that jingle and the whole nation will remember it, right? Those days are gone, right? Today it's about engagement. Today is not about being single-minded, and these are some of the theories that we've authored with our learnings. Today it's okay to be multiple-minded because you're talking to consumers across platforms. You're talking to them on TV, billboard, outside, packaging, social media, Instagram, Twitter. So you have to have multiple topics of conversation. If you're always talking one thing to your friends and your family, they'll get bored
Yeah.
of it, right?
Yeah.
So brands today don't need to be single-minded. They need to be multiple-minded. You need to have multiple sides, right? Also, you can't just do one campaign in a year vanish. I mean, imagine talking to your husband once in a year. How would that relationship be? So you have to have a constant conversation with your consumers. It has to be always on. So those are the big shifts on the way the advertising behaves today, right? I mean, today it's not just about the ad campaign. What I told you about Whisper, it's not an advertising campaign alone. It's bringing the chapter back. It's an act, right? So we do a lot of work with technology, product solutions, developing new platforms, and so on and so forth. So that's how advertising has changed in terms of content we create. I think a lot is changing and needs to change about the organization and the culture and the business of advertising, right? I mean, for example, how do we get the best talent to the business, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there was a phase in life when we've not been attractive enough at all to the new talent. We've lost all the best talent. So we at Leo Burnett are changing that in a dramatic way. We have a huge focus on campus programs. We are going to the best colleges in the country. We go to IITs, NID, MICA, Symbiosis, Jai Hind, St. Stephen's, LSR, all of these colleges, and recruiting from them. So we're bringing the best talent back to the business, right? Number one. Second is the culture, right? The culture of advertising traditionally has been very personality or diva led, right? I mean, it's about one person around which the whole organization has been built. We are changing that. We are changing that because it takes 100 people to create one great piece of work, right? And if you look at Leo Burnett, when we go on stage, everybody goes on stage because everybody who's there in that point in time in the room has had something to do with that piece of work, and that we don't put individual names to work. We're not building divas, right? Then the culture of training, right? Typically in advertising, the best training is on the job, right? I mean, except for one workshop that might happen in Bangkok or something else, right? We are investing hugely on training. We are running leadership programs in collaboration with Harvard for our leaders. We are running training programs with DNAD for career folks. We are running digital upgradation programs with IMT. So huge amount of focus on training, right? Then other aspects like building the culture, DNE&I, right? Flexibility for women, and so on and so forth. So all ingredients make a good, solid culture for people to live, learn, thrive, and succeed is what we are trying to build at Leo Burnett. And hopefully we hope that some of this change that we are doing to this organization also then kind of infects other organizations and the industry at large.
Very well said, and I'm glad that you are already working very consciously towards integrating the modern advertising ways. I would let's put it that way. But my question again comes to like, how do you remain creative? Because I think there is a flood of creativity at one end. There are different channels now. There is not one, the one it is not fitting one size at all. There's social media in different laterals. There is a lot going on in the digital world. There is a lot on the YouTubes and everywhere else. I mean, and there is a lot of trolling. There's also a lot of opinions, point of views floating in. So you're not just putting forward anything that you believe in. So you need to really keep thinking out of the box, remain creative. And there's a lot of exhaustion, not to, miss that point. So how does one remain creative in the middle of everything?
See, our definition is very simple, that we look at creativity as a tool to solve problems, right? So if there's a problem that the society has, if there's a problem that humankind has, if there's a problem a brand has, if the problem that business has, it could be any problem, right? We use creativity to solve that. So we don't define creativity merely as a piece of content that goes on TikTok or Reels, right? So to give you an example, we've created a world's first anti-crash system in India
Okay.
called Roads That Honk.
Oh,
Right. So if you the whole problem we're solving for is that if you look at India, right, 97% of accidents in India happen on national highways, right? And amongst the 97%, 70% happen on U-pin bends in hilly regions, right? So these are blind curves in hilly regions, right? These are roads which British people made, and they're thin roads, right? And the language of safety on Indian roads is honking, right? So if you see somebody coming, you honk, pom pom, and the person hears that and they stop. But on a U-pin bend, you can't see anybody coming. You don't honk and you crash, right? So we've developed two smart posts which we locate on either sides of the U-pin bend in hilly regions, right? One smart pole detects the incoming traffic, alerts the other smart pole, which then honks and emits a red
oh,
light, right?
wow.
So we launched this about 4 years back, and now at that time, the system wasn't smart. It was inert. It was self-contained between the two poles. Now we have used machine learning to train the smart poles. They can now recognize if there's one car or two cars will honk only once. Is there a dog? Is there a animal coming? Is there a person sitting on the? So it's a smart system. It's a machine learning system. We are uploading data to cloud. We can map the patterns of traffic, right? And two of these new posts have now come up on in Uttarakhand and one in Arunachal Pradesh, right? Now, this is solving a real traffic issue, and we've done this for HP, Hindustan Petroleum, whose philosophy in life is to make Indian roads safer. Now,
Yeah.
now you see how creativity is being used to solve a real problem using latest technology. So when you define creativity as solving problems, right, then you're very clear of what creativity means to you. It's not a mad rush to create another piece of content.
I think very brilliantly handled, and this is the need of the hour. But I love what you did, to be honest. I think we really need more like that. And yeah, it's really nice. So you spoke about a lot of people, being averse to advertising, in which I totally agree, because it, on one hand, wasn't lucrative. When it was commercially to be like, these younger people, of course, need to be, yeah, motivated very commercially to say, okay, I put in 16 hours, 20 hours a day. What do I get in return? And advertising wasn't the best thing. And secondly, of course, the hard work, or like a lot of exhaustion around, creating something, and turnaround time was really little. So how do you keep colleagues motivated? What's going on with Leo, or Leo Burnett, or maybe in the advertising industry on a whole right
Yeah.
now?
See, I think my feeling is that people want to be successful, right? They want to do great things. They want to own the credit for that. That's very
Okay.
important,
Right.
right? And they want a sense of success, movement, camaraderie, uh, and that's the culture we are building, right? I mean, we are very proud of what we build, right? Because I think only this is the only business we can build something from nothing. I mean, you just tell us a problem, and we
Yeah.
will give you a solution. And which other business does that? So we are very proud of that, right? We also now have models, thinking structures, learning that we've developed over the last 7-8 years, which also makes us succeed in the marketplace. So if you look at, we built India's largest e-commerce brand, Amazon. We built India's largest UPI brand, PhonePe. We built India's most successful number one streaming brand, Spotify, right? So over a period of time, we've learned how to build these brands. There's almost an outcome guaranteed, right? The work is good, and therefore people are proud of that. So that's the first piece of engineering, to say that you have to give people the satisfaction and joy of doing great work, being successful, and the rewards of that success coming back to them, not to somebody else,
Very.
right? So that's one thing that we are doing in a big way, right? The business is intense, right? Why our business is intense? Because you put your skin in the game, right? This is the only business where you cannot switch off, because you're not running a production line that, okay, you'll go back and sleep. I mean, your mind is constantly buzzing,
Right.
right, on every stimulus that you put out or every stimulus that you're getting. We can't take that intensity away. That's the nature of the business. But I don't think that people fall off because of intensity. People fall off because they don't get the rewards.
I think true, because I was heading loyalty, and this is one thing that I learned over time, that if you don't recognize people as
Yeah,
people and
yeah,
really cater to the needs before they ask, like you said, you always try to
yeah,
give more value than people really ask or they deserve. That's I think the mantra behind a lot of
yeah,
motivated people around. So that's
yeah.
really brilliant as well. And now I want to come to your podcast, of course, because you do a brilliant podcast line, and you have got people from various, I think, in cross industries. You speak a lot about, of course, learning and growth. It's a very beautiful podcast. But how did you get inspired by doing a podcast?
Yeah. Yeah, so it is a strange story. So we were talking to IVM, right? In fact, IVM reached out to us and they said, let's discuss podcast as a tie-up from a Leo Burnett brand marketing perspective. And we were having this conversation with Amit Doshi of IVM and Kavita, right? And in the conversation, I figured that if I have to understand the medium and if I have to evangelize it and sell it to my clients and so on and so forth, I need to understand what that medium is about, right?
Right.
So I said, okay, why don't I, as an experiment, do a podcast? And we agreed on doing 5 episodes. We said, okay, let's do 5 episodes, and I learn what podcasting means and so on and so forth. And meanwhile, let's do a tie-up and let's see where this goes.
Right.
And this was also during the pandemic, Archana, and a lot has been spoken about what people went through in pandemic. Very little has been spoken about what leaders went through pandemic, right? I mean, running an organization through pandemic, right? Not wanting to let people go, making sure they get their salaries and increments and bonuses has been a toll. So during the pandemic, the podcast became the sucker for me, right? I mean, that 1 hour of conversation I was having with leaders became my nutrition, became my diet, because I was
Wow.
just giving. This was something that I was taking, and I started enjoying it, right? I started getting feedback. People started liking it. So from 5 episodes, we have now done 30. Not as many as you've done, but we are now 30. Yeah,
But very nice, and keep it up. And I think we need more leaders like you. And I totally agree that leaders went through so much and more, but brilliantly handled. And I think the world is back on its feet only because I think we have got more empathetic leaders. In the making, I think there was a lot of learning and unlearning for leaders as well, because they
yes,
didn't have,
yeah,
they had never expected something like this. They were never put in forefront.
yeah,
One thing is to call yourself a leader. This was a test of being a leader, honestly.
yeah,
How do you hold on to
yeah.
everything? So many emotions were all over, but brilliantly handled. I have a rapid fire round, just to know you a little bit more. So I hope that you will not get, like nervous about it, but it's really, very, very sweet questions, I promise you. And
I hope so.
you
Yeah.
will love them. Okay,
Yeah.
so if you could have an unlimited supply of one thing, what would that be for you?
Love.
No, yes, of course, always. If your life was a story, what would be the title?
Uh, from the small town of Bihar.
Too, too left to imagination, is it? To the
Yeah.
cons, to the cons and beautiful campaigns.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Okay, so what do you impulsively buy the most?
Technology.
Technology? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Name a person who inspires you, a book, a quotation, what? Like you can say anything.
Yeah, I think I'm of late I'm liking a lot of work from Adam Grant, right? And he's writing a lot about leadership and new ways of thinking and so on and so forth. So current fascination is Adam Grant.
Beautiful. What is that one, wo takiya kalam kehte hain na? Like one line or quotation that you use the most?
Bring it on.
Bring it on. Nice. Okay, so one thing that you must leave with people behind who are hearing us and seeing us today? What is that life learning that you must tell about your life?
I think the biggest learning is bringing positive energy to the room, to the space, to the relationship, to the place that you are in. Right? I mean, life is so tough. I don't think life was designed to be easy. Right? Life is tough. Right? And it's very easy to go down that spiral. Right? And everybody is struggling with something. I mean, whether they are your clients or your colleagues or your friends or your bosses or your juniors, everybody is struggling with something. Right? And I think building positivity, building that positive energy and bringing that to everything you do makes it easier for everyone. And that's been my biggest learning lesson. It's also my biggest tool, I would imagine.
And what do you do for your well-being?
I mean, for me time is very important. So once in a while, I try to switch off. I mean, if I'm writing an article, etc., it's catharsis for me because that's something I like doing.
Nice.
Right? I try to hit the gym at least 3 times a week. Right? Easier when I'm not traveling, difficult when I'm traveling. But I try to do that. But that 1 hour is my time. Right? And then I try to spend time with my kids. I think they're the biggest teachers I have because the questions they ask me, I don't have answers to. So yeah.
All right. So thank you so much for this splendid chit chat with me. I hope it wasn't very hard. It was smooth, okay, or okay for
Yeah,
you.
love the conversation. That's yes. Thank you so
Thanks,
much.
Dheeraj, and all the best. And keep doing what you're doing. You're inspiring many, and may you discover more second acts. And we will meet soon in Delhi.
Super. Thank you so much. Great being on the show.